The green chemistry is a concept that was established a few decades ago, and that proposes 12 principles to improve the production of chemicals, and it involves a lot of different things. So it's only one of those 12 that are to produce less hazardous chemicals. The other principles are more about production, that you should use like less solvents and less water and less energy and so forth. So together they are used to create a more sustainable chemical production. That was the start of it, but then the terminology green chemistry has been used a little bit like for everything. It's been hijacked a little bit as in my opinion, a greenwashing term as well, so that you can say that we use the green chemistry principles, but it can mean a lot of things. I mean, in the ideal world, we should not produce stuff and let them out in huge quantities without having any knowledge of the effects that cause. And so it means that we need to have data on the chemicals that are produced. We are far behind that now because there are so many chemicals already on the market that have not been tested. I think a lot more could be done to make the plastics much safer, and there are plastic types that are better than others, and there is a lot of knowledge, a lot of innovation potential in the chemical industry and in the plastics industry. So if we could focus on high quality plastics, on safe plastics without hazardous chemicals, and move away from the really cheap types and the single-use types, I think there could definitely be hope for plastics. The problem today is that it's just so much, and so much single use, and so much low quality, and so little control of what happens with the plastic when it has been used. So it's obvious that it can be done extremely much to improve the situation. It's room for improvement, for sure. So bioplastics is a very interesting topic. It can also often be misused as with the principles of green chemistry. So just because something is made from not oil but from a renewable resource is not the same as saying that it doesn't have any hazardous properties. Many of the most toxic chemicals come from the environment originally, and we have to have the same controls of the hazardous properties also materials made from natural sources. So producing plastic packaging without hazardous chemicals should definitely not be impossible. Might be a bit difficult in the short term, but there is innovation in place, there is knowledge in place, and if we can accept, for example, a higher cost and more transparency on the chemical content, it should be possible to produce plastic packaging without hazardous chemicals, definitely. Yes, there are a few things that are super important if we are to reach a non-toxic circular economy, and I would say the first thing is always information and transparency. So the first step is that we have to know what comes into the economy. And we have to assure that what comes into the circular economy does not contain very hazardous chemicals, but because then they will only remain. So the two first steps is to know exactly what you have and to avoid introducing hazardous chemicals into products from the start, so that you can safely recycle all the materials on the market to almost everything. And if there are certain materials that needs hazardous chemicals, that should be treated specially. So the safe and sustainable by design is a concept that the European Commission is currently developing, so it's not clear. It's an idea that comes from the chemical strategy, and it proposes sort of a way to the future. And so by establishing criteria for safe and sustainable by design, the purpose is that new innovation and new products should be done according to that, so that we slowly come to more and more products that are safe and sustainable by design. And as the criteria are not set, we don't know exactly what it will be. But the proposal right now is that there should be quite strict criteria on the hazardous properties of the chemicals. And then there should also be additional sustainability parameters that are evaluated. So, for example, carbon dioxide and water usage and raw materials, those things should also be sustainable. Definitely, we should limit the use of plastics in society today. And the case is that we may think that we have been aware of that plastic is problematic. I mean, I have been aware since I was a child, and still the plastic production has just increased and increased and increased and increased. And obviously, it doesn't feel like we were out of plastics in the 80s, but we obviously used very much less. So I think it's extremely possible to limit the use of plastics right now to quite a lot, and then to really rethink where it's necessary and where it's not. And that is probably for medical purposes and perhaps some food packaging. But for many other purposes, it should be perfectly possible to replace plastics already now.